who are obviously dependable and trustworthy. So I guess my follow-up question is, now that you have been the kind of one-man army, what's your plan to really scale and, start to delegate? Because obviously at some point you just can't scale unless you kind of master that art of delegation. So, what's your thought and process for kind of taking that next step?
That is correct. I've actually talked to contractors that I've hired currently, and I've told them my plan to hire them and having them from a 1099 contractor to a W-2 employee. So I've spoken to them. My goal is actually to fire myself, and the only way to do that is to have more units. So currently I'm in
more doors.
That is correct. Economy of scale, right? To be able to afford the W-2 employee, we need more doors. So I'm currently in the process of buying more doors, and we'll see. We'll have to take one step at a time, but I'm currently at this point in time, the prices are way up high, and I'm currently limited to my market. I want to grow my apartments here locally so that it's easier for me to scale out from here. So I'm purchasing. I offered another property. It's a single family home. I'm purchasing it for $215,000. If I bought this 5 years ago, this would be $150,000.
In 2 years from now, it'll probably go up again. So
we'll see, because foreclosures and evictions are starting to open up. So, but you have.
So when you, sorry.
I said you have to be a player in any cycle.
Yeah.
You cannot just wait.
Right. You can't just, go on I'll just sit on the sidelines for 2 years and let it,
That is correct.
Yeah. So obviously everything moves in cycles. So that's just the nature of the thing. So I guess what I wanted to follow up, at that juncture is, when you say W-2 employee, are you talking about having your own development company? Is that what you're kind of talking about?
I'm not there yet. I want more of the property management side of it, because I do reply fast, and that's one of the things that I've got feedback from my current tenants, is when they have a problem, I do reply right away, and I feel like having my own property management team, I can serve them better, and the quality is still there, because I'm still, I work with a property management team.
I see. So maybe we can flesh that out a little bit more. So is your property management team, is that a team that you assembled from the ground up, or is it more of like a proprietary, you brought in a professional company who had already built those systems, or did you build the systems yourself?
I plan to do it ground up. So having a contractor on board, having a secretary on board, or another person to help me show, the property when I have vacancies.
Okay, so that's interesting, because it sounds like you kind of, I guess my next question, because it sounds like you have your hands in a lot of different cookie jars, if you will. How do you manage, when you think about your portfolio, right? Where do you see your portfolio going in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, hopefully I'm in the hundreds plus properties.
Okay. And that includes single family, right? That includes...
Yes. Single family homes, I think, may still be there, but I'm into multifamily as well, so I don't close all doors. I would still evaluate, single family homes.
Obviously.
I'm sorry.
So apartment prescription, obviously we see the thing behind you. Tell us about apartment prescription, and how that got started, and what you see as the future for that.
Okay, so apartments, because my business is into apartment prescription, because I am a physician, and so I prescribe apartments to all and everyone, not just for physicians, but to everyone, because you want
Okay.
to have a reliability of income. You
Hmm.
cannot just rely on a W-2. And COVID, in
Yeah.
fact, proved it. In good times
Yeah.
or in bad times, we need
Big
cash
time. Yeah.
flow, right? Reliable cash flow. Because if the market turns sour, then that the W-2 employee may be a problem. If you have good rental apartments, good times or bad times, as long as it's strategically located, your apartments
Yeah.
are close to,
Yeah.
for example, healthcare. In good times
Yep.
and bad times, and with COVID, bad times, healthcare is badly needed. So if you
Yeah.
strategically locate have properties in these
Hmm.
locations, then you're gonna do well.
Yeah.
So the reason for me writing a book was because of the COVID. I want to shift my business online as well, because with apartments it's just more, local. So I
Yeah.
wrote a book, and I didn't realize that writing a book could turn into the possibility of having courses and or mentorship.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes.
that's where
Yes.
I want to be in
Oh,
the few
really? Oh, wow.
years from now.
Okay. Interesting. Um, yeah, maybe I'll come back to that because yeah, that's something I didn't know. I didn't know before, so that's definitely worth diving into. But I guess what I'll ask is, for a lot of people watching this, they are curious about. Okay, I think a lot of people will actually be in a very similar situation to you, where they've done some single family, they own some rental property, and they're kind of in that intermediate phase where they're doing probably pretty well. Um, and they're thinking about how to scale to the next level. When you think about, because I think it's easy to get in your comfort zone and you have a market that you know, and there's enough deals to go around, so you don't really have to maybe scale to the apartments. And if you were to really scale, you'd probably have to go out of your market because that's where probably the larger deals are. How have you handled that, psychologically, and maybe what would be some things you would tell people listening who are probably in that same place?
I mean, I belong in a group with who owns apartments as well.
Mm-hmm.
So for one, I need to farm myself from this position. So I need to grow
Mm-hmm.
my apartments locally. I've also
Yeah.
looked at deals from out of state as well, and partnering and possibly partnering with others, either being a GP, general
Mm-hmm.
partners in apartment syndication.
Oh, okay. Um, it was interesting you mentioned that the book was kind of the entree to potentially doing, I guess, a course program or a membership site or something of that nature. When did you start getting ideas about doing that, and what do you think the structure and format of that kind of program would be?
So that happened during the COVID when I
Oh,
had
okay.
nothing to do and lockdown, and my construction of the 4 units was shut down. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
I started writing a book just in a couple of hours, and I joined a program where the coach told us that we need to be online. And I'm like thinking, how can I get my business online when I'm so, bricks and mortar? So
Yeah.
after I wrote my book, then I looked at my mentors, which is like Ken McElroy or Grant Cardone. They have this
Oh, awesome.
mentorship and online products, right? And so they say 3 M's: model, mimic, and master. So I'm a
Yeah.
small fish and they're big fishes. So I'm just basically
Hmm.
model, mimicking, and mastering what
Right,
they're
right, right.
doing.
Exactly. That's awesome. Um, wow. Well, I think we've pretty much covered, broadly, a lot about your history, your background, what kind of deals you're looking at now. Um, what would you say is probably in the next maybe 6 to 12 months? What are you most excited about specifically building? Do you think it's going to be maybe looking at less single family deals and really focusing more on apartments, or do you feel like based on the way you already kind of manage those different projects, you have enough bandwidth to kind of do both of those at the same time?
I've talked to my contractor recently to see what the
Hmm.
market is like out there, and he says the prices are still way up high. The cost of
Hmm.
materials, lumber, roofing, from
Yeah.
all all of the materials for constructing is so high. So currently building may not be a play for this year. However, I'm purchasing properties that are already built. So I'm closing on a 6 apartment units this
Okay.
July 1st, and I'm closing
Oh,
another
great.
single family. So I'm kind of just buying built apartments or built
Hmm.
single family homes. I'm not doing any conversion and or building right now. The number has to work, when you come to
Yeah.
think about it, all at the end, numbers have to work.
Yeah. So I think that is probably one of the most interesting things is the concept of the vertical integration when you start to build your own team. It sounds like your properties are probably close enough where you could manage them, or probably you do still probably manage them mostly by yourself, right?
That is correct. I manage them. And with the help of the technology, it's actually easier because all I do is call the contractor, send them the picture of the property, and I ask the tenant if they can send me a picture what the problem is, and I go send it their way.
Oh, so so the contractor's helping you actually find tenants?
No, for example, this morning I had a problem, a plumbing leak, and so I
Okay.
ask. I have a folder in my Google Drive, and so
Yeah.
I went to the property. I took a picture of the problem because the tenant was already in the hospital. So I took a picture of that. I went back home and contacted several contractors. So I
Oh,
have,
wow. Okay.
I just sent out the pictures basically of the problems, the location of the property, and so it's easier with today's technology to manage it by yourself at the comforts of your home with just the fingertips.
Right. Yeah. So you're still are you still bidding out different jobs? Are you still you get an idea for a project, or you have the scope of work, and then you will bid that out to different contractors? Is that what you do, or do you kind of have one contractor you mainly go with?
So I have several contractors. For repairs,
Okay.
I do not do a bid. But for construction, for bigger projects, I do require bids. But for
Oh, I
minor
see.
repairs, I have a
Hmm.
budgeted, less than 200 to 250. It depends on the scope of the problem. I do not bid because number one, I value the time. I want
Hmm.
I want reliability and I want speed. So if they can solve my problem, get rid of my headache, then I'm glad to pay
Hmm.
for them for their
Right. Yeah.
services.
That's good. Okay. Are there other examples of that where you found that, you know, not necessarily, obviously you want to be frugal and you don't want to overspend for a project, but are there some other areas? I think that's a common theme where people maybe are penny wise and pound foolish. I think is probably the most well-known phrase to explain that. Are there other areas where you also take that mentality and have success with it?
With a notion of penny wise, pound foolish.
Yeah, where you're necessarily not trying to, where you understand, okay, the value of my time is such that it's a better use of my time to maybe pay a little extra in the short term, but have the long term reliability versus, trying to get bids on a project that really is only maybe a 50, 100, $200 difference. You know, Obviously this concept of scaling, a lot of it comes down to, like you said, firing yourself and not spending time doing the $10, 50 $50 per hour work and really only focusing on the higher dollar per hour work. Are there other areas where you have to kind of remind yourself about that, or where you look at something and you say, is this really the best and highest use of my time?
Yes, so a lot of it, right, is into repairs because number one, I cannot fix it. So I
Mm-hmm.
would pay instead of me trying to figure out and Googling and YouTube, how to fix things.
Right.
I would call immediately. Number two, when you purchase properties, for example, for when you purchase properties, a lot of people can be penny wise, pound foolish on property just because it's cheap doesn't mean
Right.
that it would command great returns. You have to
Yep.
consider the job growth and the location as well. So a lot of people,
Hmm.
from talking to people, that they would buy it because it's cheap, but then it
Yeah.
turns out that it's a class D property where it's hard to maintain, or you're scared for your life, right? So you
Yep.
don't want to be, pound foolish in your life. A third
Right.
is when you purchase items or materials. I'd like to
Hmm.
go, for example, to Lowe's Pro Service, because then the time I know what I want and I can rely on them, right? So I just send them a list. This is what I need. I have a go-to Pro Service guy. His name is Adrian.
Oh, wow.
And I just
Yeah.
send them, Adrian, I need this list. I need this delivered. And if and I can rely on it. Like, I don't have to be in the store driving, 1 hour back and forth to the store.
Yeah. No,
So
no.
I just give it out. I don't shop around, go to YBC or Home Depot and
Yep,
find
yep,
the
yep.
cheapest material. No, because I value my time.
Yeah. Excellent. So I think that actually reminds me, in terms of scaling, in terms of obviously materials, it's important, but when you actually are finding deals, I think that's something that is worth actually diving into. What are your favorite ways? Because you're still I know there's actually a pretty robust, especially in the single family space, because I'm somewhat familiar with some of the top instructors and mentors in those areas. There are some pretty robust systems for finding deals. So, what are some of your favorite ways to find deals in your market?
I know there's app nowadays that you can actually just take a picture of the property, a rundown property, and then that
Yeah,
will
yeah.
provide the cards right away. I haven't used that, but I'm looking into it just because, number one, I know my market. So what I do
Yeah.
is, if I drive around my market, and if I see a tender loving care single family home, I go
Mm.
either Google the owner through online records of deeds, or I go to the record of deeds office and find the property owner, and then I Google the name up and then find the number and call them up. Or I've also done cards as well. I send out cards to the owners.
Oh, really? Okay.
I've knocked on their doors as well, or if I see the owners in the street, I talk to them and tell them, "Hey, I have properties here and here. If at some point in time you're interested in selling, I'm just a phone call away." The other
Oh,
thing too
wow.
is, if I see for rent signs, I know that it's a multifamily and I see for rent
Right.
signs, I call the
Yeah.
number up and I tell them, "Hey, are you interested in selling your property? I'm not interested in renting it, but I'm interested in buying your property." And I've
Right,
actually
right. Yeah.
bought a 3-unit property just doing that.
Okay. And what was the situation? Was it just a burned out landlord, or
They've owned the
what was the
property.
motivation?
They've owned the property for three decades, or three generations, right?
Right.
And they haven't
Yeah.
scaled. They haven't scaled their apartment, so they
Yeah.
probably just have less than five. And they are
Yeah.
burnt landlords. That is correct. The tenant mows the
Okay.
grass. The rent is cheap, and so I saw the
Yep.
sign and I called the owners, and so we agreed to purchase the
Okay.
property.
And one thing that I think is interesting. So, when you look at when you take over a property, do you immediately raise the rents? Do you usually do something where you do some rehab? I mean, do you have a pretty cut and dried, cookie cutter approach to what you do when you take over, let's say, a 6 unit or a 3 unit?
So yes. So if the tenant is already in place, I will
Mhm.
abide by the current lease agreement,
Yeah.
right? So if the lease agreement is up to next year, then I will continue to honor whatever the rent is, whatever the lease agreement is with the old landlord. Now,
Right.
if they do renew, what I've done is I've increased it by $25, because hey, there's the new sheriff in town, and I've
Yeah.
either improved the outside, the exterior of the property. Of course, if they are inside, I cannot do any
Right.
improvements
Yep.
unless I need to do any repairs. If
Mhm.
if the property is vacant, then I do renovations, either kitchen and or flooring or bathroom are the three important ones that I can see that you can increase the rent when you rent it out. So I've done that as well. So then I can command for a higher rent.
That's great. Yeah, that's definitely valuable. Kitchen, flooring, and bathroom.
Bathroom.
Okay, those are the big three that justify a a raise in the rent. And then, do you do any just standard yearly, just to keep up with inflation, or do you do a standard yearly rent increase?
Um, to go, I forgot. Washer and dryer too is very important.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
lot
Right.
of times, old landlords do not provide washer or dryer. So what I do is, because my tenants are are medical professionals, so I do provide them washer and dryer.
And actually, how many units do you have now? How many doors do you currently have?
We are going into 61 units.
Oh, wow, great. And what's the largest complex or community you have?
This will be so currently 4 units, and then I'm closing on the 6 units in a couple of weeks from now. 3 weeks.
Okay, so everything you have is either single family or at the most 6 unit?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's great. Okay, so and how long has it taken you to kind of acquire all those? What's been the duration?
It's actually long to grow it to 61 units. It's going into 8 years now. So others have done it shorter.
Wow, okay.
Others have done it shorter, but my mindset was different.
Right.
My mindset was different at that point in time. So now I understand that we need to scale. I understand the importance of scaling, and that's why if I could go back in time, I would scale much faster. So my advice to everyone: scale, grow as fast as you can. But you have to consider the numbers. The numbers all have to work. You don't want to lose any of your units. So the numbers have to work.
So I think that's actually really interesting when you look at 61 units. Now, these are all in pretty much the same market, right?
The same location.
Yeah.
It's 5 minutes away from my home.
5 minutes away. So talk to us about, obviously it's a gradual process. So you get, 4 units, then you have 12, and then, year over year, I think that's so important for beginners to understand. I think it's pretty clear, maybe your personality, you've always liked to maybe dip your toe in the water and kind of build up to that. But can you talk to people about that progression of just slowly acquiring more and more units, and just over time, I guess you can speak to this, but just becoming, because someone who doesn't have any, or maybe has a couple of single family homes right now, they're thinking, oh my God, how would I ever manage 61 units? I mean, that's just, what would I be like, flying across town all the time and like stuff breaks? But I mean, at the level that you're at, you must have developed some consistent systems that allow you to not get overwhelmed. Maybe you can just talk about that.
Right. So number one is being close to your apartments. Because if it was in several different cities or towns, or even just 30 minutes away, I don't know how I'm gonna do it by myself.
Yeah.
Just because my properties are just 5 minutes away, so it's very easy to manage. I can just walk or drive and visit one house after another, right? It's so easy because they're just in 1 or 2 or 3 blocks.
Yeah. So, I guess what's actually an interesting question is, what are some changes in the market, or what have been some things that have actually caused you to sell certain assets in your portfolio, maybe that you never thought you would sell? I'm sure you have some stories about that, right?
Unfortunately, no, I have not sold any properties. When I buy,
that's better then.
When I buy, I'm very, very patient.
Yeah.
But when I find my market, when I find the property, I'm very impatient.
Right. That reminds me of the whole the Warren Buffett quote, be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy. So I just want to say, Ria, it's been so great to have you on today, and I'm glad we got to talk, because I think the biggest thing that listeners will get from this episode specifically is I do think there is something about, once you get over the fear of being able to do construction and see how you can actually change the use case of a property and dramatically increase the value. I think you've done a good job today of talking about how converting properties and seeing a property as kind of a blank slate, and really not having any preconceived notions, or just having a blank slate approach to a property, knowing you can go in, rip it down to the studs, and really do as much as your creativity can handle. I think that is a threshold for investors, where it opens up a new paradigm of creativity and in their investment strategy. So I'm so glad we got a chance to talk about that. I do want you to, just before we wrap up and let everyone go here, what are some ways that people can reach out to you or learn more about? I think this coaching program is going to be really exciting. So just tell us about how we can get in touch with you, if there's specific things you want to mention, especially, I guess, about this coaching program. But I guess that's still in the works, right?
Yes, that is correct. What I can say is invest in yourself. It's the biggest investment ever. So there's always a mindset block. So read books, try to learn from others, try to learn from mentors. Mentors can actually shorten your hardships, can actually shorten the years that you have to, grow and scale your business. So invest in yourself, invest in mentors. Now, what I can say is that you got to put your feet into the market. Always look at it. Don't just wait and time the market. Do deals now. Even if you're not buying, always look. Now, they can all reach me through info@apartmentprescription.com, info@apartmentprescription.com, or you can just Google apartmentprescription.com.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you so much. I have a feeling that, if I ever have a question about something, I can just reach out and call you, and we can talk about anything that's happening, even if it's in a different market, I'm sure. But yeah, thank you so much. And I'm excited to stay in touch and learn about, how your coaching program progresses, and get more details on that. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Martin.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.